Hey guys, tonight we begin with the surprisingly tense and occasionally absurd night before one of history's greatest battles, the eve of Gaugamela, when Alexander the Great decided to take a nap before conquering the world. What exactly happens when the most ambitious man in history sets up camp right before destiny? Turns out it wasn't all heroic speeches and slow-motion sword polishing. There were logistics, bad food, restless horses, and soldiers arguing about who forgot the olive oil again. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's drifting off with history from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The camp of Alexander the Great began to stir under a moonlit sky. Shields stacked neatly, fires crackling low, and somewhere in the quiet the sound of destiny breathing just beyond the horizon. The sand is cool beneath your palms as you stretch your fingers into it, tracing invisible lines that might as well be borders between empires. It's quiet, too quiet for an army. The Macedonian camp spreads in a patchwork of tents and low fires, each one glowing faintly like a lantern in fog. Horses shift and snort, leather creaks. Someone coughs in a way that feels too human, too fragile for this place. You're a soldier, or maybe just a ghost passing through the eve of the Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BCE. To your right, the Tigris River sleeps in the dark, slow and secretive. To your left, invisible in the blackness, is the vast Persian host under Darius III. Tens of thousands of men who'd rather not meet Alexander tomorrow morning. The world feels balanced on a knife's edge. Historians still debate whether this was the most decisive battle of Alexander's life or merely the most poetic one. But tonight, the only thing that matters is the space between one breath and the next. You shuffle along the camp perimeter, pretending you're checking the lines, though really, you just can't sleep. The air tastes like iron and smoke, the kind of flavour you'd pay to forget. Around you, other insomniacs murmur. One soldier, let's call him Philon, tosses a pebble into the fire and says, "If the Persians have that many men, maybe they'll trip over each other before reaching us." Everyone laughs quietly. You join in because humour's cheaper than courage. A torch flares somewhere near the general's tent, and for a moment, the whole camp seems to inhale. Alexander is awake. Of course he is. He's the only one who looks rested, even when he hasn't slept. Word spreads like smoke. He's walking among the horses, bareheaded, smiling, as if tomorrow's chaos is just another sunrise. You lie back, watching your breath curl upward. The stars above are cold and infinite, and you wonder which one the gods are watching from. You think of home, of Macedonia, its rocky hills and stubborn olive trees. You left that world years ago, chasing glory that now feels suspiciously like exhaustion. A few tents away, men whisper about omens. Someone claims to have seen an eagle flying east. Someone else says a torch went out too soon. Bad sign, he mutters. But then again, everything's a bad sign when you're awake at 2 a.m. before a battle. Historians still debate whether Alexander truly believed in divine fate or just used it like good PR. Either way, he knew how to make people believe they were part of something enormous. You close your eyes, imagining him tracing the maps by lamplight. Babylon, Persia, the edge of the world, it's all ink and dust until morning. There's a faint rustle as a scribe adjusts scrolls inside the main tent. You picture the wax seal melting, letters written to his mother, Olympias, promising victory again. You can almost hear his stylus scratching. Tell them I slept well. Of course he didn't. Somewhere beyond the camp a dog barks, then silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty but pregnant, with nerves, with whispers, with destiny stretching itself awake. You roll onto your side, cheek pressed against a leather shield. The metal edge is cold, grounding. You think of your weapon leaning nearby and realise how absurd it is that something so small can change an empire. You're supposed to sleep, but instead you count breaths. You count fires. You count the faint shadows of the men who will charge beside you tomorrow. The night deepens. You can smell the faint sweetness of crushed grass under the trample of boots. The campfires flicker lower. You hear a snore, followed by another, like waves against the dark shore of the plain. You almost drift off, almost. In that twilight between waking and sleep, your mind drifts. You imagine the Persians, tents spread like stars across the horizon, drums muted, camels chewing thoughtfully. You wonder if someone on that side of the plain is doing the same thing right now, lying awake, counting heartbeats, wishing this whole mess could be solved over wine instead of spears. You'd both agree to that in a heartbeat. Your stomach growls. You forgot dinner again. Not that it was much, some barley bread and a piece of salted meat so tough it might still fight back. You think half seriously that dying might be easier than chewing. That's joke number one, and it doesn't even make you smile. You drag your cloak tighter. Somewhere nearby, a young soldier hums a tune, something about home, about harvest. It's off-key but comforting. The melody reminds you that even in the middle of empire-shifting moments, people still hum to keep the dark away. The wind changes direction, carrying with it a faint scent of something floral. Persian incense, maybe. Or just the earth breathing before dawn. You tilt your head back, eyes open to the black vastness. Time slows, the stars blur. For a heartbeat you feel small enough to disappear between them. But then, a hoof strikes the ground somewhere near, and you're back. A horse snorts, a voice curses softly. Life continues. You glance toward the horizon and realise the faintest edge of grey has appeared there, dawn's first rumour. You exhale slowly, letting your breath mingle with the night's last chill. The realisation settles in. This might be the final quiet you'll ever know. Not because of death, but because tomorrow noise will return, the clamour of armour, the clash of destiny, the long echo of history being made. Still you find yourself smiling. It's absurd, but that's humanity for you. We grin before storms, make jokes before endings, and somehow sleep when the world leans on a single moment. The night folds itself tighter. The fires become embers. Alexander's shadow moves once more across the camp before vanishing into his tent. You finally close your eyes, whispering to no one in particular. Let it wait till morning. The plains of Gaugamela sigh in agreement. You wake before the sun, not because anyone shouted, but because the world itself seems to hold its breath. The horizon hasn't yet decided whether to be night or morning, and the air feels like it's waiting for permission to move. You sit up slowly, brushing sand from your cloak, and the chill clings to your fingers like cold silk. Across the plain, fires glow in small clusters, their smoke curling upward in lazy ribbons. You start counting them, not because it matters, but because the act gives your brain something to hold on to. 1, 2, 3, 57. It's like counting sheep, except every sheep carries a sword and unresolved trauma. You lose track somewhere around 100. The Macedonian camp feels like a living creature, sleeping, breathing, muttering in its dreams. Somewhere behind you, a horse nickers softly. Someone stirs the coals of a dying fire. The ground hums faintly with life, as if the very soil knows it's standing at the crossroads of history. They say there are over 40,000 of you, and maybe that's true, though the darkness makes everyone look smaller. Out there, beyond that thin curtain of night, waits the Persian host. Some say 200,000, others whisper 1 million, as if numbers themselves could make the enemy more terrifying. Historians still debate the real figure, but at this hour it's not about statistics. It's about the way your stomach flips at the idea of being swallowed by a tide of men. You look out at the lights across the plain, tiny dots scattered far beyond your own campfires. Persian torches. You can't help but count them too. They look like stars that fell to the ground and decided not to get up again. For every one that flickers out, you imagine a man crawling into his blanket, muttering a prayer in some language you'll never understand. It's oddly comforting, that thought. Proof that fear sounds the same no matter which god you believe in. Someone sits beside you. It's Philon again, the guy with the pebble jokes. His face looks older in the half-light, carved with lines you hadn't noticed yesterday. "You're counting again," he says, voice hoarse. You shrug. "Better than thinking," you reply. He grins and spits into the dust. Not much difference. You both watch the line of torches. "You think he's awake?" Philon asks, meaning Alexander. You nod. Of course he's awake. Men like him don't sleep. They rehearse destiny. Across the camp, a ripple of activity stirs. The officers are making their rounds, speaking in low tones. The fires brighten. You hear the faint hiss of oil poured onto flame. The first hint of dawn touches the eastern sky. bleeding pale gold into the black. It's beautiful, and for a second you forget there's a battle coming. Then someone sneezes behind you, shattering the spell. You stretch your legs, bones popping like dry twigs. It's going to be a long day. The armour beside you catches the dim light, edges glinting with soft menace. You pick up your helmet, feel the cool metal against your palms, and sigh. The smell of bronze and sweat, probably not a perfume anyone will bottle soon. Think we'll win? Philon asks. You look at him, then to the vast dark plain, then back. Eventually, you say. It's a non-answer, but it makes him chuckle. Good enough for me. A horn sounds somewhere deep in the camp. Low, distant, almost mournful. Not the call to arms yet, just the soft note that says, wake up, history's coming. The air vibrates with murmurs, the sound of men adjusting belts, testing spearheads and finding reasons to smile. Someone offers bread. It's dry and dense, but warm from the coals. You chew slowly, eyes fixed on the growing light. Another man pours watered wine into a wooden cup and passes it around. It tastes like metal and ash, but it helps. You think about the people who've stood like this before every great battle. Troy, Thermopylae, wherever courage and foolishness meet halfway. Historians still debate whether fear sharpens bravery or dulls it entirely. You decide it does both, sometimes in the same heartbeat. Across the field, the Persian camp begins to stir. You can almost hear it, a murmur too vast to name. A million sandals shuffling, 1,000 banners unfurling, drummen testing their first sleepy rhythms. The faint smell of unfamiliar spices drifts on the wind, cardamom smoke and the unmistakable tang of cooked lamb. You smile despite yourself. They eat better than we do, you mutter. Philon laughs, then glances toward the centre of camp where a larger glow flickers. He's up, he says. You follow his gaze and see the unmistakable silhouette of Alexander near his tent. Helmet off, arms folded, talking to his officers. His cloak catches the light and flutters slightly in the dawn breeze, purple trimmed with gold. Even from a distance, he looks like someone who's decided the outcome already. He moves among his men, pausing to clap a shoulder here, nod there. He doesn't shout, he doesn't have to. The mere sight of him works better than speeches. You can feel morale shift, as tangible as wind. It's strange how faith in a single man can drown out an entire empire's fear. Someone behind you murmurs, he's calm, too calm. Another answers, that's why we follow him. And it's true, Alexander has that unnerving serenity, like a storm eye that makes everything else spin faster. You keep counting fires, footsteps, breaths, until the numbers blur. Somewhere in the rhythm you start to feel the weight of time. The plain of Gaugamela is ancient, even by ancient standards. Empires have marched here before. Empires will again. But tonight you're the witness caught between memory and myth. The stars fade slowly, giving way to a lighter blue. You see the first outline of distant hills. The world sharpens by degrees. Dust motes dance in the dawn air. Someone nearby is muttering a prayer to Zeus. Someone else kisses a small amulet carved in the shape of a lion. Superstitions are contagious out here. Remember that time we thought the horses were ghosts? Philon says suddenly. You laugh. They were just shadows. Still, he grins, better ghosts than Persians. You glance at the torches one last time before the light swallows them. They look so small now, tiny dots fading into day. You stop counting at exactly 150. It feels symbolic, though you're not sure of what. A trumpet call splits the quiet. The sound slices through the camp, long and low, waking even the most stubborn sleepers. Around you men rise in unison, like a single body remembering how to move. The world goes from stillness to motion in a heartbeat. Alexander's voice carries faintly through the morning air. Something short, sharp, confident. You can't hear the words, but you feel their pulse. He points east toward the pale plain where the sun will soon burn away the mist. You stand. The ground feels alive beneath your boots. You look back once at the camp, now bathed in soft gold, and realize the fires you counted are gone. In their place a new light grows, the kind that doesn't flicker. The breeze picks up, tugging at cloaks and standards. Horses stamp. Somewhere a drum begins to beat. A slow, steady rhythm like a heartbeat waking from a long dream. You inhale, slow and deep. The air tastes like metal and sunrise. You look at Philon and smile. Ready? He shrugs. Not really. Good, you say, me neither. And the two of you laugh quietly, the kind of laugh that sounds suspiciously like courage. The counting's over, now comes the waiting. The fires of Gaugamela fade into morning light, and somewhere out there Alexander's destiny waits, still just a few heartbeats away. The camp wakes like an orchestra tuning up. Spears rattle, armour clinks, and the low murmur of thousands of men turns into a rhythm all its own. The smell of oil and bronze mixes with sweat and wood smoke, the scent of human history in motion. You stretch the stiffness from your arms and step out into the thin, pink dawn. The world looks half-formed, the kind of light that makes everything feel suspended between dream and waking. In front of you, the Macedonian tents form neat rows, still dotted with the last few flickers of firelight. Farther beyond, a faint shimmer, the Persian camp, massive, distant, almost unreal. You walk toward the centre, drawn by quiet voices and the glow of lamplight leaking from the main tent. Inside, Alexander is awake, naturally. The man probably hasn't closed his eyes since Babylon. You linger by the entrance flap, where the scent of oiled leather and ink drifts out, mingled with the faint sweetness of dried figs. Through the open slit you catch a glimpse. Alexander standing over a table, a map unrolled before him, its edges held down by daggers. The parchment looks soft from handling, the ink faintly smeared. He traces lines with one finger. Movements, maybe, or possibilities. And you can tell he's running the entire battle in his head like a musician rehearsing a song. The light hits his face just right. Calm, pale, focused. It's infuriating. You're supposed to see nerves somewhere. A twitch, a crack in the armour. There isn't one. He's too still, like a statue waiting for applause. You shift your weight. Parmenion, the old general, stands nearby, his voice low but urgent. He gestures toward the horizon, his tone suggesting more caution than confidence. You can't hear the exact words, but you recognise the energy. An older man reminding a younger one that invincibility is just a rumour. Alexander listens, then he smiles. You've seen that smile before, it's half reassurance, half challenge. It says, "I hear you, but I won't change a thing." He murmurs something, and Parmenion sighs, the way only someone who's seen too many battles can sigh. Historians still debate what was actually said, but you know the spirit of it. Parmenion advising restraint, Alexander choosing destiny. Outside, the first real rays of sunlight slant across the tents. You turn away and walk toward your horse line, boots crunching on hard soil. The ground feels almost brittle beneath your feet. Somewhere nearby, Bucephalus snorts, a deep, proud sound that vibrates through the air. You glance over and see him. Huge, dark, restless. The horse seems to shimmer under the early light, muscles twitching like waves beneath his coat. He knows something's coming. You stand there for a moment, just watching Alexander's shadow move within the tent. The lamplight shifts, the flap opens, and he steps out. No armour yet, just a plain cloak, hair uncombed, expression somewhere between exhaustion and amusement. He looks up at the brightening sky as though consulting someone invisible. Then he exhales sharply, stretches, and says something to Hephaestion, who laughs. You blink. For a second it's easy to forget this man commands an empire. He could be any soldier trying to shake off bad sleep. Then he moves again, fast, precise, too graceful for coincidence, and the illusion breaks. You understand why people call him divine. You move aside as he walks past, his hand brushing the flank of Bucephalus. The horse stills instantly, as though reassured by touch alone. There's affection there, quiet and wordless. You wonder if the horse feels the weight of history too, or if he just wants breakfast. Alexander speaks to the grooms, voice low, gentle. You catch fragments, feed him lightly, polish the hooves, no chains. He treats Bucephalus like a friend, not a weapon. You think about your own horse, a smaller, nervous thing that likes to kick people who deserve it less than you do. As Alexander moves down the line, men straighten automatically. They always do. It's not fear, it's gravity. You can't help but feel pulled toward him too. The man could tell you the sky was green and you'd start doubting your eyes. Phelon reappears beside you, rubbing his arms. He doesn't even look tired, he mutters. You think he sleeps with one eye open. You grin. Maybe he charges rent to Morpheus. That earns a snort. Morpheus would just move out. The camp laughs more easily now. Even humour feels sharper, cleaner, like the air before a storm. Alexander mounts the small rise near the centre of camp to watch the horizon. The Persian camp is stirring. Dust plumes drift upward like ghosts. For a while he just stands there, silent. You can see the tilt of his head as he studies the terrain. He doesn't look at the size of Darius's army. He looks at the shape of the ground, the dips, the lines, the subtle slope toward the river. He's reading the battlefield like a poem. Do you think he's nervous? Philon whispers. You watch Alexander's silhouette framed by dawn. I think he's alive, you say. A messenger approaches him. A young officer with eyes too wide for his own good. He kneels, murmurs something. Alexander nods, dismisses him with a flick of the wrist, then looks skyward again. Historians still debate what omen he saw that morning. A hawk, maybe, circling above the Persian camp. You like to think it was nothing at all, that the only omen was the sunrise itself. Nearby, a priest offers a small sacrifice, grain tossed into the fire. The smoke curls upward, carrying prayers you'll never hear. You don't believe much in omens, but the smell of burning barley feels strangely comforting. Do you ever think, Philon says quietly, that maybe we're not supposed to win this one? You shrug. We weren't supposed to win any of them. He laughs again, softer this time. Guess we're bad at instructions. The wind picks up, tugging at your cloak, carrying the faint clang of metal from distant ranks forming. Somewhere behind you, the phalanx drills. Short bursts of movement, a forest of pikes rising and falling in unison. The sound is hypnotic, almost musical. Alexander turns from the hill and strides back toward the tent, barking brief orders. The generals follow, Parmenian, Conus, Hephaestion. The rhythm of leadership is its own kind of drumbeat. You catch fragments, angle of attack, light cavalry, river flank, before the voices fade into the hum of purpose. You lean against a tent post, watching. The sky now burns orange at the edges. Dust motes shimmer like fireflies. The army, for all its noise, feels oddly peaceful. Everyone has found their task. You realise that these quiet moments of motion before motion, is the real heartbeat of war. For a second, you imagine what it must feel like to be Alexander himself, knowing that entire continents pivot on your next decision. The thought makes your chest tighten. You're glad to be nobody right now. Nobody has better odds of surviving the morning. You start checking your gear again, mostly for comfort. The straps are tight, the spears straight, the shield smooth beneath your hand. You mutter to yourself, don't drop it this time. You remember last battle, the spear that snapped, the bruise that refused to fade, and you smile wryly. History doesn't mention bruises, only glory. The air warms slowly. You can almost feel the world tilting toward dawn. A thin mist clings to the grass, making every breath taste faintly of dew. You tilt your head and realise you can hear birds now, small brave creatures unaware they're singing above two armies. A herald's horn sounds again, shorter, sharper this time. The day begins. Alexander emerges from the tent, fully armoured. The transformation is startling. The plain cloak replaced by polished bronze, the purple crest on his helmet catching the light like fire. He looks every inch the legend he's supposed to be. Yet when he adjusts his sword belt, it's with the same small tug that any soldier makes. He's human, just wrapped in myth. As he mounts Bucephalus, the camp falls silent for a heartbeat. You can hear the horses breathing, the soft crunch of hooves. Then Alexander turns his head, scanning his army with a faint smile. Not pride exactly, but recognition. Like a teacher looking over students before a final exam. You straighten instinctively, shield against your leg. His gaze passes over you, briefly, maybe accidentally. But in that instant you feel something impossible. That you matter, that all of this matters. The horn sounds again, the ranks begin to form. Philon nudges you. Guess it's showtime. You nod, half smiling. Yeah, curtain's about to rise. In the east, the first full disk of the sun breaks free of the horizon, flooding the world in gold. For the first time you see Gaugamela clearly, the flat plain stretching miles, the faint mirage of the Persian host shimmering like a sea. It's breathtaking, it's terrifying, it's history, live and unscripted. You take one last breath before the day truly begins, letting the air fill your lungs and anchor you. Then you whisper to yourself, almost a prayer, may the counting stop here. The wind answers by stirring the banners overhead, each one whispering its own small prophecy. The sun has barely climbed above the horizon when a strange quiet settles over the camp again. You've never known silence to be this heavy, this deliberate. Every man seems to move in rhythm, but no one dares speak. The morning wind slides across the plain, and the sound of it brushing the tents feels like whispered anticipation. You wander through the maze of soldiers tightening belts and adjusting spears, your boots kicking up the pale dust that coats everything like flour. The faint sweetness of oil, sweat and horse lingers in the air, a perfume only armies could create. Near the heart of the camp, Alexander's tent stands open. Inside, you catch a flicker of gold and red, a small flame dancing in a bronze bowl. A priest hums quietly, feeding incense to the fire. The smell of myrrh and cedar drifts out, coating the morning with something ancient and calm. Alexander kneels before it. His armour gleams in the firelight, but he looks less like a conqueror, and more like a man trying to make sense of fate. For a heartbeat, you wonder if he's praying for victory, or just for clarity. Historians still debate how much of his faith was politics and how much was real devotion. But right now, kneeling in that dim glow, he looks very human. You linger outside, not daring to interrupt. You remember something you once overheard in Babylon, that Alexander visited Delphi years ago, before the great campaign began. The oracle had told him he was invincible. Maybe that's true. Maybe it was marketing. Or maybe she just wanted him to stop asking questions. You smile at the thought. The memory ripples through your mind like a dream told by firelight. You imagine the oracle, tired, cryptic, watching this same young man press for divine assurance. And now, here he is, years later, still chasing the same promise under a foreign sky. He rises, dusts his hands, and steps into the daylight. You look down as he passes, though you feel his presence brush by like heat. His eyes catch the light, and for a moment they look far older than his years. "Remember the words," Philon whispers behind you. "He thinks he's invincible." You glance back, then let's hope the Persians didn't hear that. The faintest chuckle escapes him. Humour is currency this morning. You spend it sparingly. You follow as Alexander moves through the ranks, stopping to greet his men. Not with speeches, but with gestures. A nod here, a clap on the shoulder there. Each contact leaves a ripple of focus behind. You notice how the soldiers straighten afterward, as if their spines remember what pride feels like. He stops near a small group of veterans. You edge closer to listen. One of them, an older man with a scar down his cheek, murmurs something about omens. A hawk seen circling, a dream of rain. Alexander laughs softly. "Good," he says. "Then the gods are watching." You can't tell if he believes it or if he's just good at pretending. He mounts Bucephalus again, moving with the ease of a man who's done it 1,000 times. The horse tosses its head, and the light scatters from its mane like sparks. Together they look like myths sculpted from sunlight. Behind them the army stirs, the rhythm of readiness spreading outward like a wave. Spears align, shields adjust, commands echo in growing tempo. It's all motion now, smooth and efficient, the choreography of inevitability. You feel the pull of it, the strange hypnosis that happens when thousands move as one. You think fleetingly of the oracle again, of prophecy and choice, of the fine line between belief and burden. The air thickens with dust and the faint hum of anticipation. Somewhere a soldier starts humming an old Macedonian song, its notes trembling like a prayer wrapped in melody. You find yourself mouthing along without realizing. As the morning brightens, you move toward the outer edge of the camp. The Persian lines are visible now, a shimmer of metal and colour stretching endlessly. Standards flutter, lions, suns, and winged symbols you can't name. The sheer scale of it steals your breath. "They look like an ocean," Philon murmurs. You nod and wear the pebble. He grins, "Then let's make a good splash." That's joke number 2, grim, but it helps. From where you stand, the Persian ranks look almost beautiful. A living mosaic of armour, cloth, and banners. You imagine Darius somewhere at the centre, surrounded by silk and gold, probably drinking something expensive while deciding which god to thank later. Historians still debate whether Darius truly feared Alexander or simply underestimated him. Either way, you suspect the Persian king isn't sleeping much better than you did. A sudden gust catches your cloak, carrying a low sound across the plains. It takes you a moment to realise it's chanting, distant but powerful. Persian priests, perhaps, invoking their own gods. The syllables roll through the air like waves, unfamiliar yet rhythmic, and you can feel them vibrating in your ribs. Alexander raises his hand toward the eastern horizon, the gesture calm but commanding. The murmur in your ranks stills instantly. "Look at him," Philon says, "like he's about to tell the sun what to do." You smile faintly. Wouldn't surprise me if he could. The sun crests higher, burning away the last of the mist. The plain glows gold, and for a moment it feels unreal. Too cinematic, too deliberate. Like the gods hired a good director. Alexander speaks softly to Hephaestion, and then points toward a distant ridge. The other generals nod, peel off, and begin issuing orders. Cavalry mounts, infantry adjusts formation. The sound of discipline replaces the hum of uncertainty. You take a deep breath, feeling the ground tremble faintly beneath your boots. Horses stamp. Shields knock together. The morning has teeth now. Think the oracle was right? Philon asks quietly. You squint into the light. I think she was clever enough to keep her options open. He laughs, the sound swallowed by the wind. A messenger rides past, dust spraying from his horse's hooves. He shouts something in Greek, something about position and timing. You only catch fragments, but it's enough. The final preparations are nearly done. Alexander lowers his arm and looks west for a heartbeat toward home. Then he looks forward again, toward the plain, the future, the unending unknown. You feel a strange calm settle inside you. Maybe it's resignation, maybe it's awe, maybe it's breakfast fatigue. But in that still moment you stop being afraid. You just exist, caught between the hum of life and the silence of history waiting to happen. Alexander turns Bucephalus back toward camp, calling out a few last commands. His voice carries, firm but not loud, like a teacher guiding rather than commanding. The ranks shift again, fluid, certain. As he passes by, the light hits his armour, and you catch your own reflection there for a split second, dusty, mortal, very small. You exhale, slow and deliberate. The wind smells of metal, sweat, and faraway myrrh. You think about how absurdly peaceful this feels. If the gods were watching, they might assume both sides planned a picnic instead of a war. You look up at the sky, brilliant, empty, impossibly blue, and whisper to yourself, "If I die today, at least it's under a beautiful sky." Philon elbows you. You're supposed to say something brave. You grin. That was brave. I complimented the weather. He snorts, but his eyes soften. Humour his armour too. The chant of readiness moves down the ranks, names called, orders confirmed. The clink of armour is steady now, the heartbeat of thousands in sync. You can feel the pull of inevitability tightening, the air humming with fate's low vibration. You close your eyes for a second, let the sound wash over you, and when you open them again, Alexander is already riding toward the front lines. His back straight, his head unbowed, like someone who never learned the meaning of hesitation. The oracle's words echo faintly in your memory. Invincible. You smile. Maybe invincibility isn't about never falling, it's about never pausing. The priest's fire behind you crackles once, releasing one last curl of smoke into the morning. You take it as a sign that even the gods are holding their breath now. You leave the heart of the camp and wander toward the edge, where the night's ashes still smoulder, and the air feels thicker with whispers. Men sit huddled in small circles, clutching pieces of bread and wine, talking in low voices. It's not strategy, it's memory. They tell stories of home, of mothers and wives and goats and stupid neighbours, as if saying their names could somehow keep them alive till sundown. You lower yourself beside one of these groups, the earth still warm beneath you from the fires that burned all night. Someone passes a piece of bread your way. You take it, chew slowly, it tastes like dust and comfort at the same time. The voices blend into a kind of music, Macedonian, Thracian, Greek, languages crossing over each other in a rhythm that could almost lull you back to sleep. A man next to you hums something that sounds like a lullaby. Another picks up the tune, then another. Within minutes, the camp hums softly with a song that has no words. You look across the circle at Philon. He's holding something small in his hand, rubbing it between his fingers. You lean closer. It's a tiny wooden carving of a lion, crude but lovingly shaped. "My kid made it," he says quietly. "Said it would keep me brave." You smile, even though the lump in your throat doesn't let it reach your eyes. "Does it work?" He shrugs. "Still here, aren't I?" That earns him a few chuckles from the others. Even now, humour survives, stubborn as weeds. Someone tosses the twig into the fire. Sparks leap up, then vanish into the pale morning. The conversation turns to omens again, because what else do you talk about when history's breathing down your neck? One man swears he saw a fox run between the tents last night. Another claims that's good luck. A third disagrees. They debate it with the kind of passion normally reserved for politics or wine quality. Historians still debate whether armies in Alexander's time genuinely believed in omens or simply used them as conversation starters before doom. You decide, it doesn't matter. Faith, superstition, caffeine, it's all fuel to keep you upright. A soldier named Menes leans back, arms behind his head. I heard Darius has elephants, he says. Big ones. They say the ground shakes before you even see them. Another man snorts. Good, then we'll hear them coming. I hate surprises. You laugh, but you can't help picturing it. Huge animals moving through dust, the air vibrating with each step. It's terrifying and weirdly majestic. You wonder if Alexander has a plan for that. You assume he does. He always does. The fire crackles. Someone opens a small clay jug of wine and passes it around. It's sour, but no one complains. You sip and hand it on, wiping your mouth with the back of your hand. The taste lingers, metallic, smoky. Remember Granicus? Menes says. Full of blood. You nod slowly. And mud, mostly mud. Mud. Phelon grins. You fell in, didn't you? You smirk. Strategic dive. That earns a few tired laughs. You're grateful for them. A horn sounds faintly in the distance, signalling another round of preparations. The men groan but start gathering their things anyway. The lazy moment shatters, leaving behind only echoes of warmth. You rise, brushing dust off your knees. The world feels sharper now, brighter. The sunlight has climbed enough to reveal the full breadth of the Persian host. Even from here it's a staggering sight, banners like waves, glittering armour stretching to the horizon. The scale feels impossible, like someone painted the desert with armies. You stare too long and feel something heavy settle in your chest. That's when you hear laughter. Small, soft and real. It comes from behind you. Phelon's balancing his bread knife on one finger, muttering something about the art of war being mostly about keeping your knife upright. You shake your head. That's philosophy now? Better than theology, he says. At least knives exist. That's joke number 3, and it earns a ripple of quiet chuckles. The moment passes like a breath. A patrol walks by, 3 officers and a few scouts. Their armour gleams, polished within an inch of its life. One of them, young and sharp-eyed, stops to scan the horizon. Persians are moving, he says flatly. Not marching yet, just adjusting their line. The men around you go still. The air seems to tighten. You glance toward Alexander's hill and catch a glimpse of him standing there, arms folded. He doesn't move, doesn't react, just watches. You wonder what he's thinking. Maybe he's remembering home too, the hills of Macedonia, the lessons of his tutor Aristotle, the shadow of his father Philip still following him through every campaign. Historians still debate whether his genius came from training or ego. Probably both. You suspect they're the same thing anyway. A gust of wind stirs the dust at your feet, and for a second it looks like smoke. You blink, and it's gone. The soldiers are silent again, staring at the horizon like it might blink first. You hear a snore. Phelon's dozing with his head on his knees, mouth slightly open. You elbow him gently. If you snore during the charge, I'm leaving you behind. He grins without opening his eyes. Then I'll die well rested. Lucky you. You mutter. You wander a little away from the group toward the edge of the camp. The ground dips there, leading to a small stream that cuts through the dust. You crouch down, splash some water on your face. It's cold enough to sting. The reflection that stares back at you looks unfamiliar. Older, harder, tired. You smile weakly at yourself. You look terrible, you whisper. From somewhere behind, a horse neighs. You glance back, see Bucephalus tossing his head impatiently as grooms prepare him for movement. The sight steadies you. If the great horse can stand calm before all this, so can you. The wind shifts again, carrying sound. Faint, rhythmic, metallic. You realise it's the Persian army moving in formation. A murmur ripples through your camp. Men rise, stretch, check their weapons. The day is finally stretching its limbs. You take a deep breath. The scent of the earth is stronger now, full of heat and life. The plain feels alive, humming underfoot. You can almost feel the pulse of history warming beneath the surface. Phelon joins you, still half yawning. You ready? He asks. You glance at him, then at the horizon. Not even close. He grins. Perfect. The two of you stand there for a while side by side, watching the sun lift fully over the plain. The light floods the world, blinding and beautiful. It hits Alexander's armour like fire, setting him aglow in gold. Around him banners rise, catching the wind like wings. For a heartbeat, the entire army holds still. Then the horns sound again, long, low, inevitable. The lull is over. The whispers die. History clears its throat. You're walking now, slowly, deliberately, part of a long line that snakes along the edge of the camp. The officers call it a patrol, but it feels more like a ritual. The air still holds the chill of dawn, though the sunlight has started to lick the tops of helmets, setting them ablaze with muted fire. The world beyond the camp is a strange kind of quiet. You can hear the distant hum of the Persian camp, a living sound, half drumbeat, half breathing. Every now and then a gust of wind carries faint notes of something cooking, maybe lamb or spiced grain. It's a taunting comfort. Two armies close enough to smell each other's breakfast, but pretending they're worlds apart. Your boots crunch softly over the ground, dry and cracked like cold pottery. You run your fingers through the air, tracing invisible lines where dust motes dance. It's beautiful in a haunting way. You think, if you could take this stillness, bottle it, and open it in a noisy city centuries from now, people would pay to breathe it. Ahead, one of the scouts crouches, his silhouette outlined by the pale sun. You join him. He points toward a faint shimmer across the plain, the Persian vanguard moving. You squint. The movement is subtle, more suggestion than shape. The dust above their heads glows gold. Adjusting their lines again, he mutters. They want us to see them. You nod. Showmanship. He smirks. Same as ours. You can't argue with that. The entire war is theatre with worse costumes. You keep walking, eyes scanning the horizon. The land here rolls gently, dotted with thorn bushes and low mounds, perfect for hiding small contingents, terrible for sleeping on. Somewhere in the distance, a group of horses toss their heads and stamp. You find yourself thinking of the river not far away, the trickle of water that once marked Alexander's crossing into the heart of Persia. It's strange how rivers mark moments, before and after, home and away, possible and irreversible. Historians still debate whether he crossed by strategy or sheer impatience. You would bet on the latter. A movement catches your eye. Something pale darting between two boulders. A fox, maybe, or superstition-given fur. The men murmur, each interpreting the sight differently. Good omen, bad omen, irrelevant. You let them talk. People need their signs before they need their swords. You round the edge of the camp and find yourself staring at the endless expanse of the plain. The sunlight now stretches across it fully, revealing lines of chariots glinting like beetle shells, Persian cavalry in loose ranks, their horses decorated with silver and blue cloth. They look regal from this distance, almost peaceful. You can hear the faint clang of metal, shields adjusted, harnesses checked. The sound travels strangely, as if carried on invisible strings. For a moment it feels like music. A voice calls your name, you turn, it's Philon, jogging to catch up, breathing hard. You left without me, he says between breaths. I figured you were napping. Woke up because someone stepped on my helmet. You smirk. Good alarm system. He grins, falling into step beside you. The two of you walk in silence for a while, the crunch of gravel, your shared language. The camp behind you hums with preparation, the clatter of armour, shouted names, the rhythmic thump of hooves. You ever think about what happens if we actually win this? Philon asks suddenly. You raise an eyebrow. We eat better for a week? He laughs. No, I mean, after all this, when we get home, what's left to do? You think about it. We find another horizon. That sounds exhausting. It's Alexander's hobby. You both chuckle, then lapse into quiet again. The horizon burns brighter now, and you can make out more of the Persian camp, rows upon rows of tents, each one a small world of nerves. You imagine their own patrols, their own jokes, their own Philons wondering what comes next. Historians are going to love this, you mutter. Philon squints. What's a historian? You grin, a future version of us, but indoors. He laughs so loud it startles a bird from a bush nearby. The flutter breaks the tension, and for a moment you both just watch it go, wings flashing white in the sun. Then, from somewhere behind, a horn sounds, low and distant. A signal. Not alarm, just movement. The patrol halts, every head turning toward the sound. Another horn answers, closer. The pattern repeats, rippling across the camp like a heartbeat syncing up. Alexander's army is waking fully now. You and the others turn back toward camp. Dust already rises in gentle swirls as units start forming up. You can see the glint of armour in tidy rows, banners lifting into the air. The rhythm of readiness hums louder than before, steady and inevitable. As you approach the edge of camp, the smell changes. Iron, oil, sweat. The scent of preparation. Men are adjusting straps, checking beans, whispering last jokes or last prayers. One man wipes his sword with a rag as if polishing could make it luckier. You step past a small group gathered around a priest. He's sprinkling water over a bronze brazier, muttering words you can't hear. The smoke curls upward, blue and fragrant. You catch only one phrase, "May the dust remember our names." You like that, it sounds almost kind. Philon leans in. "Think the dust takes requests." You grin. "Depends on how loud we make them." That earns another laugh, thin but real. You spot Alexander again near the centre, still mounted, still watching. His posture hasn't changed in hours, as if patience itself were armour. The generals surround him, gesturing, pointing, murmuring strategies that seem too small for this vastness. A scout rides up fast, dust spraying from his horse. He dismounts, bows low, says something urgent. Alexander listens, then nods, smiling faintly. Hephaestion leans close, whispers something that makes him laugh quietly, the kind of laugh that sounds like steel sliding free. You can't hear their words, but you don't need to. You can feel the current change, subtle and electric. The air hums differently, like the moment before a storm hits. Philon notices it too. He's decided something. You nod, probably everything. The scout remounts and gallops away. Alexander raises one hand, just a small gesture, but the effect ripples outward. Horns sound again, sharper this time. Commands barked. The machine of war clicks into place. You stand there, the world vibrating faintly beneath your boots. You realise this waiting is worse than battle itself. At least in the chaos, you forget to think. The Persian camp, miles away, seems to shift in response. A haze of dust blooms above their front lines. Somewhere out there, 1,000 hooves are moving, invisible but felt. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. Not to the noise, but to the spaces between the noise. The pauses, the inhale of the earth. The held breath of fate. You think of how strange it is that silence can be so loud. A shout breaks through. "Scouts returning!" You open your eyes just in time to see them. Riders approaching fast, horses foaming, eyes wide. The lead scout shouts as he passes. "They're deploying!" The word ripples through the camp like a gust of wind through tall grass. Everything sharpens. Men reach for shields, tighten grips. The last moments of stillness dissolve. Philon exhales slowly. "Guess that's our cue?" "Yep," you reply softly, voice steady despite the tremor in your chest. You glance once more at the Persian lines, a mirage of silver and red shimmering in the sunlight. Somewhere beyond that horizon, Darius waits, a mirror version of your own commander. Two men who built their worlds from dust, now ready to trade everything for a story. You take a breath. The air is hot now, heavy with dust and history. The patrol dissolves back into the army. The ground beneath you seems to vibrate, not from footsteps, but from destiny pacing impatiently nearby. You look up at the sky, endless blue, careless of both empires, and think, if this is the last morning I see, at least it's wide enough for everyone. Then, like a sigh, the horns sound again. The patrol is over. The waiting is not. By the time you make it back to camp, the sun is already high enough to burn the dew from the tents. The day has sharpened. No more soft light. No more dreamlike haze. Every sound feels louder now. The clang of armour, the slap of leather straps, the steady rhythm of footsteps as thousands fall into order. You make your way toward your unit, weaving through rows of soldiers. Someone curses as a spear falls. Someone else laughs too loudly, pretending not to care. The air hums with tension so thick you could slice it with the very spears men are holding. Near the centre of the camp, a scribe is reading names from a wax tablet. His voice drones like a teacher calling roll in a classroom no one wants to attend. Every name answered is another reminder that by nightfall some voices won't answer again. You find your spot among the phalanx, the familiar rectangle of men who've marched beside you through deserts, rivers, and half a dozen bad meals. You nod at them, they nod back, no one says much, the silence is companionable, practical, talking wastes air. Then you notice something unusual. Letters. Not the kind on maps, but real folded parchment scraps passed from hand to hand. At first you think it's orders, but then you see the expressions, soft, hesitant, tender. These are letters from home. You sit cross-legged beside Philon, who's fumbling with a small strip of cloth tied around a bundle. "Got one?" you ask. He grins weakly. "From my sister. She writes like a drunk goat, but it's still nice." You laugh under your breath. "What's she say?" He opens it, squinting at the uneven lines. "That I should eat more, sleep more, and not die. Classic advice." "Solid plan," you say. "Mine says about the same." You unfold your own letter, a wrinkled scrap written months ago. The ink's faded, the words smudged from travel. You know them by heart anyway. It's from your brother, the one who stayed behind to farm olives on that stubborn patch of land near Pella. He wrote about the harvest, about the new calf, about how your mother still swears you'll come home with a crown or a wife, whichever finds you first. You smile, though the corners of your eyes sting. "Guess she didn't bet on Empire," you mutter. Philon glances over. "She'll brag about it later." You fold the letter carefully, slip it back into your tunic. Around you, other men are doing the same, tucking words of home against their hearts like makeshift armour. For a brief moment, the battlefield feels far away. A trumpet blares somewhere beyond the tents, snapping the moment like a whip. Officers shout orders. Men rise, pulling helmets into place. The music of war resumes, clatter, stomp, breath. You stand and sling your shield over your arm. The bronze surface catches a glint of sunlight, momentarily blinding you. You blink, disoriented. The reflection shows your own face, distorted, unfamiliar. You look like a statue someone forgot to finish carving. Philon bumps your shoulder. "You good?" "Yeah," you say automatically, "just thinking." "Dangerous hobby." You grin despite yourself. "Tell me about it." As you fall into line, you hear a low voice. An officer reciting the standard pre-battle instructions. Keep ranks, follow signals, watch the flanks. It's all familiar, yet somehow the words sound different today, final. You catch fragments of conversation drifting between ranks. Someone jokes about writing their name on their sandal so the gods can identify the body later. Someone else says, "Too much effort. I'll just haunt whoever forgets me." It's morbid, sure, but funny in the way only fear can be. Humour is the currency of survival. The air shifts as a breeze rolls across the camp. It carries with it the distant roar of the Persian host, an echo so deep it seems to come from the earth itself. You turn toward the sound. The sight is staggering. An ocean of movement, banners rippling like waves, sunlight glinting off a million metal edges. A murmur ripples through your ranks. You hear the same words over and over. So many. But then, above the noise, Alexander's voice cuts through, clear, calm, even lazy. You can't make out all the words, but you catch the tone, steady, unhurried. The kind of voice that makes you believe he's seen the ending already and doesn't mind it. Historians still debate what he said to his men before Gaugamela. Some record speeches, others claim silence. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. Just a few words, enough to remind everyone that destiny has better aim than fear. Philon leans closer. You think he rehearses those? You shrug. Or maybe he just wakes up that confident. Unfair, Philon mutters. Some of us need breakfast to feel heroic. That's joke number 4. You chuckle anyway. Then comes the sound of hooves, slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Alexander is riding through the lines again, Bucephalus gleaming beneath him. The men fall silent as he passes. He doesn't speak this time. He just looks. It's enough. When his gaze passes over you, you feel it. Not like fire, but like gravity. He's the centre of everything, and you're caught in his orbit. He stops near a cluster of younger soldiers, says something that makes them laugh. You can't hear what, but the ease in their posture afterward tells you everything you need to know. The man doesn't lead through fear, he leads through belonging. As he rides on, you feel your shoulders straighten. Not out of pride, but out of strange peace. If this is where history ends, at least it's under good management. You glance at Philon. He's watching Alexander too, expression unreadable. He looks like he's already won, Philon says. You nod. Maybe he has. The camp shifts again. Horns, orders, motion. Units begin to move outward, forming into lines. The ground trembles under the weight of thousands of synchronized steps. You fall into place, shoulder to shoulder, with men who now feel like extensions of yourself. The formation moves toward the edge of camp, where open plain waits, endless and golden. Every few steps you glance toward the horizon. The Persian army seems to shimmer in the heat, a mirage that won't disappear. Somewhere behind, the priests chant again, soft, rhythmic, their words carried by the wind. To the gods the brave belong. The phrase loops in your head, half lullaby, half warning. You march in trance, your feet sinking slightly into the warm soil. The dust rises, clinging to armour, hair, skin. His world smells like earth and iron. Someone sneezes. Someone laughs nervously. Someone mutters that he should have stayed in farming. The smallness of it all, the jokes, the scratches, the breathing, keeps the enormity from crushing you. By the time you reach the front edge of the plain, the sun is blinding. You raise a hand to shield your eyes. The air feels heavy, saturated with heat and expectation. You stop when the officer signals halt. Ahead of you stretches open land, the no-man's zone between two worlds. A vast, empty breath before collision. Philon exhales slowly beside you. You smell that? You nod, dust and history. He smirks. Mostly dust. A beat passes, then another. Somewhere a hawk circles, its cry slicing through the silence. You watch it, tiny against the vast blue sky, and wonder if maybe it's the same one the priests keep talking about. If so, it's probably bored of omens by now. The horn sounds again, 3 long notes. The formation tightens. Alexander is visible far to your left, his horse gleaming, cloak snapping in the wind. He raises his spear. Every man holds his breath. It's not the start yet, just rehearsal for the moment to come. But it feels like the world's about to flip over. You grip your spear tighter, feel the sweat slide down your wrist. The air hums. The letters tucked in your tunic press against your chest, a heartbeat within a heartbeat. You close your eyes for half a second, just enough to memorize the sound of this stillness. The last ordinary moment before history begins to roar. The war council gathers again, just as the sun climbs higher, burning the morning into gold. You can tell something's changed, some invisible decision finally made. The tents near the command ridge are open, the air thick with dust and command. You stand far enough away not to intrude, but close enough to catch fragments of history in the making. Alexander sits astride Bucephalus near the map table, his generals arrayed like chess pieces around him. Parmenion stands stiffly to one side, arms crossed, face carved with fatigue and worry. Quirinus and Hephaestion speak softly beside him, tracing lines on the dirt with the tips of their spears. The map they argue over is half covered in sand, but that hardly matters. Every man here already knows what it looks like, an ocean of Persians waiting to swallow them whole. You shift your stance, straining to hear. Parmenion's voice rises slightly, crisp and deliberate. You can't catch every word, but you hear the tone. Caution. He's asking Alexander to wait, maybe even retreat a little. There will be other days, his body language says. Alexander shakes his head. He gestures toward the horizon. From your vantage point you can see it too. The Persian host, banners rippling, sunlight flashing off armour that stretches farther than you can see. Alexander leans forward in the saddle, voice low but certain. Now, he says, that one word carries like thunder. Historians still debate the exact exchange, but in this moment you don't need their notes. You can feel the weight of it, the tension between strategy and instinct, between old caution and young hunger. Parmenion sighs, a man resigned to genius or madness. Same thing, really. He bows slightly, then steps back, his hands falling to his sides. The argument is over. Alexander dismounts, dropping lightly to the ground. He kneels, scooping up a handful of the earth. You watch him rub it between his palms, studying its texture as if the dust itself could tell him the outcome. Good ground, he murmurs to no one in particular. It remembers courage. That's not something he learned from Aristotle. That's something that lives inside him. He stands, brushes off his hands and looks around at his officers. Form the lines, he says. 3 words, and the council dissolves into action. You step aside as messengers dash off in all directions. The air thickens with command, shouts, horns, the grinding rhythm of an army reshaping itself into purpose. Philon sidles up beside you, watching the chaos unfold. So that's it? We're doing this? You nod. Apparently we're history's favourite experiment again. He snorts. Do we get a say? Not unless you outrank him. He laughs under his breath. No thanks, looks stressful. The two of you watch as units move into formation. Phalanx in the centre, cavalry on the wings, archers positioned along the ridges. It's like watching a living organism find its skeleton. The sound of the shifting ranks fills the air, a kind of clinking heartbeat. Horses snort, men shout names, shields lock into place with heavy thuds. The dust rises in shimmering clouds that glow like smoke in the sunlight. You realise, standing here, that this is the moment right before time becomes a memory. The council is over, the waiting nearly is. You glance back toward Alexander. He's a remounted Bucephalus, flanked by Hephaestion and a handful of companions. He raises one arm and a ripple moves through the ranks. It's not fear anymore, it's readiness. Behind him, the priests finish their blessings. You can hear the faint crackle of fire, the murmur of words older than Greece itself. The scent of burning barley wafts on the wind again. Phelon nudges you. You think the gods are actually listening. You shrug. If they're not, they're missing a good show. That earns another laugh, quiet but real. From somewhere far off, the faint rhythm of Persian drums begins, a deep, pulsing sound that rolls across the plain like distant thunder. You feel it in your chest before you truly hear it. The Macedonian horns answer, sharp and clean, the echo of defiance. You glance sideways at Phelon. Think they can hear us. He grins. If not, we'll just yell louder. The first orders reach your section. You move with your unit, stepping into line. The phalanx extends, spears angled, shields overlapping like the scales of some enormous creature. The movement is slow, deliberate, like drawing a sword from its sheath. The wind picks up again, carrying bits of sand that sting your skin. You narrow your eyes and focus on the horizon. The Persian army seems to shimmer and breathe, an illusion made of men. You can make out their chariots now, massive wheels with gleaming blades attached to the hubs, meant to tear through ranks. The sight makes your stomach tighten. Those are new, Phelon mutters. You swallow. Let's hope they handle like carts. That's optimism. No, that's denial. He chuckles. Same difference. The drums grow louder. You can almost match your heartbeat to them. The sun climbs higher, casting the world in harsh brilliance. Sweat trickles down your back beneath your armour. You glance once more at Alexander. He's motionless atop Bucephalus, his spear tip glittering in the light. He looks like he's waiting for the universe to nod before he moves. And then he smiles. He says something to Hephaestion, who grins back. You can't hear them, but whatever was said seems to loosen the air itself. Alexander lowers his spear, points it toward the horizon, and begins to ride forward slowly. The sound that follows isn't a cheer, not yet. It's the collective inhale of tens of thousands realizing that the future has just started walking. The horns sound again, short-clipped, deliberate. Phelon exhales. Here we go! You nod. Too late to go back. The line shifts, inching forward. Spears level, shields steady. The ground vibrates faintly beneath your feet. You hear the first clatter of Persian chariots beginning to roll, faint, then louder. Metal shrieking against stone. The drums merge into a steady thunder. You glance up at the sky. It's impossibly bright, the kind of blue that doesn't forgive mistakes. You whisper to yourself, okay, let's make it count. Beside you, Phelon mutters, I was hoping we'd nap through this. You smirk. You first. Laughter ripples faintly through your line. It's absurd, and that's why it works. The horns blow again. The line surges forward, just a step or two. The noise swells, 1,000 small sounds joining into one colossal roar. Alexander rides ahead, turning his head briefly as if to check that you're all still with him. Of course you are. Where else would you be? The drums from the Persian side reach a fever pitch now. You can feel them in your ribs, in your teeth. It's not just sound anymore. It's vibration, pure and physical. And yet, through it all, Alexander seems impossibly calm. You think of the council, of his certainty, of Parmenian's sigh. You wonder which of them history will remember better. The man who warned, or the man who didn't listen? Probably both. You grip your spear tighter. The air smells of iron and dust, sharp and electric. You can almost taste it, like biting into a storm. A final horn blares, louder than before, echoing across the plains. This isn't the charge, not yet, it's the heartbeat before it. Alexander lowers his spear again, just slightly. The gesture ripples outward, through generals, through captains, through you. The entire army seems to lean forward as one. Phelon glances at you. You. Eyes wide but steady. You realise we're inside a legend right now? You nod slowly. Yeah, let's try not to mess up the ending. The drums keep pounding, the horns keep singing, and the world holds its breath. One last time. You feel it before you hear it. Bucephalus's hooves beating against the ground in rhythm with your pulse. The sound rolls through the ranks like a heartbeat, slow and steady. Alexander rides the line, not rushing, just existing with the quiet assurance of someone who's already lived through tomorrow. The men whisper as he passes, not his name but his presence. There, someone murmurs. The king, and even though you can barely see him through the haze of dust, you know exactly where he is. The horse's mane ripples like a river of shadow as he moves. You've seen Bucephalus before, of course, at parades, at previous battles, but there's something different today. The horse seems charged with the same strange stillness as the air itself, both waiting to explode into motion. You tighten your grip on your spear and step forward as your unit moves closer to the front line. From here you can see everything, the horizon shimmering with heat, the Persian ranks spreading wider than you thought possible, and Alexander sitting tall against that backdrop, a bright spot of certainty in the chaos to come. Philon nudges you with his elbow. He's talking to the horse again, he says. You glance over, squinting through the glare. Sure enough, Alexander leans close to Bucephalus's neck, lips moving. Maybe he's murmuring comfort. Maybe he's reciting tactics. Or maybe he's sharing secrets only conquerors and horses get to hear. Think the horse talks back, you whisper. Philon smirks. Probably gives better advice than the council. That earns a few muffled laughs around you. Even here, on the edge of history, humour persists like weeds through stone. Alexander finishes whatever he's saying and straightens. He pats Bucephalus's neck once, then lifts his chin toward the horizon. The signal horns sound again, long and resonant, echoing across the plain. You can feel it in your chest. The Persian drums answer almost immediately. Their rhythm is deeper, more primal. The sound carries like thunder over water. It's the call and response of empires. Showtime. Philon mutters. You nod, but your throat is too dry to answer. The chariots move first, great wheels slicing through the dust, the bladed hubs glinting in the sunlight. From this distance, they look graceful, almost elegant, until you realise how fast they're coming. A shiver runs through the ranks. Someone whispers, "They'll cut right through us." But then you see Alexander lower his spear and gesture sharply to the left flank. The cavalry begins to shift, not in panic but in precision, opening gaps exactly where they're needed. You realise what he's doing, creating pathways, traps, choreography and dust. The chariots thunder closer, wheels screaming, and you can see the faces of the Persian drivers now, painted, fierce but terrified beneath it. Alexander doesn't move. Bucephalus paws the ground once, impatient. Why isn't he? Philon begins, but then it happens. The Macedonian archers on the flanks release a volley. Arrows arc through the air like falling stars, slicing into the dust ahead of the chariots. Horses rear. Wheels catch on uneven ground. The first few chariots falter, tipping, crashing into one another. The rest swerve, spilling men and momentum in every direction. The cheer that rises from the ranks is half disbelief, half relief. You join in, throat raw, the sound torn from somewhere between fear and joy. Alexander lifts his spear high, a single flash of bronze in the light. You can't hear his words, but the gesture is unmistakable. Forward. The Macedonian line begins to advance. You move with it, step by step, the rhythm of training taking over. Your shield feels heavy, your spear heavier, but your legs know what to do. The ground is uneven beneath your boots, but you barely notice. The sound of your comrade's footsteps merges with your own until it feels like one single body moving across the earth. Dust fills your lungs, the air smells like iron and sweat and burning oil. Somewhere to your left, a horse screams, a sound too alive to ignore. You don't look, you can't. Ahead you can see the Persian infantry now, rows upon rows of men in bright armour, their banners whipping in the wind. They're shouting too, but their voices blend into one deep wave of noise. "Closer!" Someone yells. You lower your spear, muscles tightening. Every step brings you nearer, until the shapes ahead stop being a blur and start being faces. You catch one face clearly. A young Persian soldier, eyes wide, mouth set. You wonder if he's seeing you the same way. Just another nameless shape in the tide. The world narrows, sound disappears, the sunlight wavers, turning everything gold and white. Then, for a heartbeat you hate, everything stops. You can see Alexander far ahead now, a bright figure weaving through the chaos, Bucephalus moving like a wave cutting through surf. His spear flashes, precise, deliberate. He's not reckless, he's rhythmic, like he's conducting the battle instead of fighting it. You find yourself moving faster, caught in his momentum even from afar. You shout something, not words, just sound, and the men around you echo it. Phelon's voice cuts through the roar. You're smiling. You hadn't realised it, but you are. It feels insane, but it's true. There's something pure about this. The terror, the unity, the realisation that right now, you're part of something enormous. You push forward. Spears meet shields. The sound is like breaking storms. The first impact nearly knocks you off balance. You push back, shouting, shoving, breathing through your teeth. The phalanx holds, it always holds. The Persians push harder. Dust clouds rise so thick you can't tell where the earth ends and the sky begins. The air tastes like rust and grit. "Keep formation!" the officer screams. "Hold the line!" You do, because that's all you can do. The rhythm takes over. Push, brace, breathe, push again. Your body moves on instinct now. The sounds blur, metal, grunts, cries. It's not chaos. It's a strange, terrible order. In a rare lull, you glance sideways. Phelon still there, face streaked with dust, grin wild. "Still think this is a bad idea?" you shout. "Every second!" he shouts back, then laughs so hard it turns into a cough. You push forward again, shoulder to shoulder. Somewhere above the noise, the horns sound once more. You glance up through the dust and see Alexander cutting toward the Persian centre, a streak of movement so fluid it doesn't look real. He's going for Darius, of course he is. Historians still debate whether Darius fled before the charge or because of it. All you know is that the Persian centre begins to waver. The line bends, not breaks, not yet, but trembles like something on the verge. Alexander drives forward, his companions at his side. Bucephalus charges through a gap, the dust curling around them like smoke. Phelon's voice cuts through the noise again. "He's doing it, isn't he?" You nod, breathless. He's always doing it. The horns blare again, signalling the advance of the flanks. You move forward with renewed force. The Persian line begins to fold inward, confusion spreading like fire in dry grass. The noise swells, deafening. You can't tell where commands end and instinct begins. You think of Alexander again, of the calm before the storm, the quiet talks, the way he touched Bucephalus's neck like it was part of his own pulse. Now that calm has turned into something unstoppable. The horse rears once, the sunlight haloing them both, and for a heartbeat, you believe the oracle might have been right. Invincible doesn't mean untouchable, it means undeniable. You push forward again, and somewhere through the roar, the dust, and the shimmer of heat you realise something strange. You're not afraid anymore. You're just awake. Far across the plain in the shimmer of heat and dust, the Persian camp glitters like a mirage. You've only ever seen it from a distance, banners fluttering, gold catching the sun. But now, as the Macedonian line drives forward, you feel close enough to smell it. The air tastes different here. Sharp, sweet, perfumed with incense and fear. You can almost imagine Darius himself sitting somewhere behind that ocean of men. His chariot raised high on a platform, his robes flowing like painted fire. He's not shouting. Kings don't shout. He's just watching, jaw clenched, as the chaos creeps closer. Historians still debate what he thought that morning. If he truly believed his numbers guaranteed victory, or if he already knew that wars are lost by hesitation long before they're lost by the sword. Alexander never hesitates, that's his magic. Back where you stand, the dust thickens until the air feels solid. You wipe your eyes, your mouth, but it's useless. Everything tastes like metal now. The sound is a storm, spears striking shields, men shouting, horses screaming. The Persian chariots that survived the first volley are still coming, a few scattered survivors cutting erratic lines through the melee. One rushes toward your section, wheels tearing at the earth. You brace yourself as the driver leans low, shouting in a language you don't understand. The blades flash as they pass, slicing through air, dirt, chaos. Someone beside you shoves, and you hit the ground just as the chariot careens past. You feel the wind of its passing like a slap. When you scramble up, it's already gone, tipped, broken, swallowed by delier, by dust. "Still alive?" Phelon shouts. You nod, breathless. "Barely." He grins, teeth white against his dust-smeared face. "You're getting better at this." "Tripping?" "Surviving." That earns a short, hysterical laugh. You'll take it. You steal a glance toward Alexander again. He's a streak of motion, sunlight flashing off his armour. You see him wheel Bucephalus sharply, cutting across the Persian front. It's like watching lightning move sideways. Wherever he goes, the Macedonian line surges. He's heading straight for Darius. You can't see the Persian king clearly, just a shape high above the mass of men, his chariot surrounded by guards. The scene is surreal, almost theatrical. One man in purple robe standing amid a living sea of silver and bronze. Darius gestures frantically, pointing, shouting. The Persians press forward again, but something's changed. You can feel it before you can name it. It's not fear exactly, it's disbelief. They've seen the impossible too many times already. The ground shakes as cavalry charges past your flank. Dust erupts, blinding you again. You lower your head. Keep moving, keep breathing. Each step forward feels heavier than the last. Somewhere to your right, a soldier stumbles. You reach out instinctively, catching his arm. He looks up, eyes wide, grateful for a second before he's gone, pulled back into the moving mass. Phelon yells something, maybe your name, maybe a curse, but the noise eats the words. You can't answer. The Persian line wavers again. The once perfect symmetry now fractured into panic. You see gaps, small ones at first, then larger. Men retreating, shouting to one another, banners falling. And then, suddenly you see it. Darius's chariot lurches backward. He's leaving. For a heartbeat, no one believes it. Even Alexander seems to pause, stunned. Then it hits everyone at once. The Persian king is retreating. Is he running? Phelon gasps. You stare, blinking against the dust. Looks like it. Why? You shake your head. Because he's smart enough to be afraid. Historians will later argue whether Darius fled too soon or simply at the right moment to survive. Standing here, you don't care. You just know that his departure shifts the entire plain. The Persian line collapses like wet clay. Alexander surges forward, Bucephalus pounding the ground like thunder. His companions follow, Hephaestion, Ptolemy, Clytus, their names already half carved into history. The Macedonian cavalry cuts through the Persians like fire through silk. You can't help but watch. It's chaos, but it's beautiful. You've never seen motion like this. Fluid, ruthless, alive. Every turn of Bucephalus's neck, every shift of Alexander's arm feels choreographed by something bigger than strategy. He's insane, Phelon mutters, awe and terror braided in his voice. Maybe, you say, but so are we. The Persian retreat becomes a rout. You hear horns blaring in confusion, orders lost in the wind. The once mighty army begins to crumble, its soldiers scattering like dust in sunlight. You push forward with the others, following momentum more than command. Each step feels surreal, unreal, endless. The ground is littered with dropped weapons, broken shields, overturned chariots. You step over them without thinking. Somewhere ahead, Alexander halts, scanning the chaos. You imagine what he sees, the world breaking open, victory spilling out of its seams. But he doesn't smile. Not yet. He raises his spear once more, signalling the advance, not to chase, but to hold. Discipline over glory. That's the difference between a conqueror and a madman. Phelon exhales, shoulders sagging. It's over, he says softly. You look around, the dust still swirls. The noise hasn't stopped, but something in the air feels final. Almost, you correct. You glance down and notice a small object half buried in the dirt. A broken seal, maybe from one of Darius's chests, engraved with the symbol of a winged sun. You pick it up, brush it clean. It glints faintly, even through the grime. You slip it into your belt without thinking, not as loot, but as proof. Proof that you were here when the world shifted. The wind changes direction again, blowing the dust away just enough to reveal the plain stretched wide before you. The Persians are still fleeing. The Macedonian line holds, shining in the light like a single blade. Alexander turns Bucephalus back toward the army. His armour is spattered with dirt, his hair matted with sweat, but his face is calm, almost serene. You can see it even from here. The horns sound once more, not a call to fight, but a command to stop. The sound rolls through the ranks like relief made audible. You drop your spear just for a moment and realise your hands are shaking. Your whole body hums with leftover adrenaline. Phelon laughs beside you, half cough, half joy. We're alive. You grin weakly. Don't sound so surprised. He wipes dust from his face, leaving streaks of pale skin beneath. Think they'll write songs about this? You shrug. Maybe, but I doubt they'll include us. Good, he says. Let the songs be wrong, the sleep's better that way. You laugh. Loud, full, maybe a little broken. The kind of laugh that comes only after surviving the impossible. As the noise dies down, you glance back at the battlefield. The dust is settling now, revealing what victory actually looks like. Exhaustion, silence, and the strange emptiness that follows achievement. Somewhere in that emptiness, Alexander is already planning the next horizon. You look at the fading sky, the smoke, the sun, slowly leaning west, and you realise something quietly terrifying. There will always be another horizon. But for now, just for this breath, you let yourself be still. The sun is merciless now, high, blinding, molten. The morning cool has burned away, leaving only the dry breath of the plain. Your armour feels heavier with every heartbeat, your tunic sticking to your skin. When you finally reach the riverbank, it's like stepping into another world. The Tigris is shallow here, a ribbon of silver threading through dust. The sound of water is almost shocking after the roar of the battlefield. You kneel without thinking, scoop up a handful, and splash it over your face. The cold strikes like truth. Around you, other soldiers are doing the same, drinking, washing blood from their hands, some just staring blankly at the current. The water runs clear again after a few feet, as if it refuses to carry any memory of what happened upstream. You stare at your reflection, broken by ripples. It's strange to see your own face in daylight. Eyes wide, skin streaked with grime, a thin line of dried blood across your cheek. You look older, but not wiser, just more temporary. Phylon drops beside you with a grunt, armour clattering. He plunges both arms into the river and lets out a sound halfway between a sigh and a prayer. If I die now, he says, tell everyone it was from drinking too much peace. You chuckle softly. Oh, you're not allowed to die yet. You still owe me wine from Babylon. True, he says. Guess I'll have to keep existing. He leans back, letting his fingers trail in the current. You ever notice, he says quietly, that after every battle, the world just keeps going, like it doesn't care who won? You look out over the water. Maybe that's how it stays sane. He nods, eyes half closed. Historians will call this victory. We'll just call it Tuesday. You grin despite yourself. You'd make a terrible historian. He smirks. I'd make a great one. I'd skip the speeches and just write, everyone was tired and wanted to go home. That earns a laugh from a few nearby soldiers who overheard. It spreads like sunlight, soft and contagious. Further down the riverbank you see Alexander dismounting. He's surrounded by officers again. Hephaestion, Ptolemy and a few others. Their faces drawn with exhaustion and disbelief. Even Bucephalus stands still, chest heaving, flanks dark with sweat. Alexander walks to the edge of the river and kneels, cupping water in his hands. He drinks slowly, deliberately, like he's tasting the world he just changed. You watch him carefully. There's something different about his posture now. Not arrogance, not even pride. It's reflection. The kind that comes only after surviving both glory and doubt. He speaks quietly to the men around him. You can't hear the words, but his tone is softer than you've ever heard. He gestures toward the plain, toward the fading dust. He's not celebrating, he's counting. Maybe losses, maybe lessons. Historians still debate whether Alexander ever doubted himself after Gaugamela. Looking at him now, you think he must have. Even invincible men have to catch their breath. Phylon follows your gaze. He doesn't look happy. He's thinking. About what? Tomorrow. Phylon groans. Already? You shrug. He's Alexander. There's always another tomorrow. The wind stirs, carrying with it the scent of river reeds and something faintly sweet. Wildflowers, maybe. You hadn't noticed them before. They grow in clusters along the bank, small bursts of colour against all this brown. You pluck one absently, turning it between your fingers. Phylon grins. You going soft on me? Just proving life still grows here, you say. Optimistic. Necessary. He nods and flicks water toward you, catching your shoulder. You know, I'll miss this part. What, war? No, the waiting after. When the noise stops but you're still alive. You look back at the river. Yeah, it's the only time everything makes sense. You both sit there for a while, letting the sound of the water fill the silence. The river reflects the light like glass, blinding and beautiful. A shout breaks the calm, one of the officers calling orders. The men start to gather, forming rough lines again. Alexander is moving back toward Bucephalus, his face unreadable. Guess nap time's over, Philon mutters. You sigh. Maybe tomorrow. As you stand, you feel the ache in your legs, the weight in your arms, the human cost of victory. It's funny how nobody writes that part down. You look once more at the river. The surface shimmers, catching the sunlight in 1,000 fragments. You think about all the places it will flow, to Babylon, to the Gulf, to seas that don't care who bled on their banks. You think about the men who didn't make it here, about the letters folded against their hearts that no one will read. For a second you wish you could gather them all up, the words, the laughter, the breath, and send them drifting downstream. Maybe the river would remember better than history ever will. Philon slaps your back lightly. Come on, philosopher, let's go be alive somewhere else. You grin. Lead the way. You fall into step beside him, boots squelching in the wet sand. The army begins to move again, a weary tide pulling itself together. The sound of armour replaces the sound of water. The day presses on. As you march, you glance over your shoulder one last time. The river glints behind you, patient and eternal. The reeds sway in the wind like quiet applause. You think, maybe, when all this is over, you'll find your way back here. Not for war, not for glory, just to listen to the water and remember what stillness sounds like. The sun has begun its slow slide westward by the time you march back toward the main line. Shadows lengthen, stretching long fingers across the trampled ground. The clatter of weapons fades into background noise, less a song of triumph, more the quiet sigh of exhaustion. You walk with your shield hanging from one arm, the other hand absently tracing the dents and scratches along its surface. Every mark tells a story, none of them worth bragging about. You'll polish them out later, or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll keep them as proof that you were here when the world spun faster than usual. The army has stopped moving. You can see rows of soldiers settling in where they stand, too tired to care about comfort. Some are binding wounds, others are just staring at nothing. A few have already fallen asleep sitting upright, shields still in their laps. You drop beside Philon, who's gnawing on a piece of bread that looks like it predates civilization. He waves it at you. "Victory feast," he says, mouth half full. You grin. Looks gourmet. Best part, he says, swallowing, is the texture, like biting a rock. That's probably because it is a rock. He shrugs and takes another bite anyway. Crunch adds character. You laugh, but the sound feels distant, hollowed out. Around you the camp has turned into a landscape of fatigue. Men murmur prayers of thanks, some cry softly, and others just stare into the distance, too drained to do anything else. Across the field the Macedonian banners hang limp in the still air. Even victory looks tired. Then you hear it. The faint clatter of shields being adjusted, armour tightened, the soft rustle of soldiers rising. At first you think it's another order, another formation, but no, it's quieter than that, almost reverent. You turn your head and see Alexander walking along the line. He's dismounted now, Bucephalus trailing behind, his head low, but proud. The king's armour glints faintly in the fading light, his face calm, expression unreadable. He looks both utterly human and impossibly distant, like he's already halfway into legend. The men straighten as he passes, not from duty but from something deeper. Respect, awe, love, maybe all the three. He says a few words to each small cluster, gestures softly, touches a shoulder here, a forearm there. When he reaches your group, everyone goes silent. He looks at each of you in turn, mud-caked, sweat-soaked, alive. His eyes are steady, sheer, as if memorizing faces he might not see again. When his gaze meets yours, you can't help but straighten. For a second it feels like he's seeing you, not just as one of thousands, but as yourself. Then he nods, slow and deliberate. "Good work," he says simply. 2 words, nothing grand, but they land heavier than any speech. Philon exhales as Alexander moves on. He said, "Good work." You nod, I heard. That's it, you're not going to brag later. I'll frame it in my mind. He chuckles, then sighs. He's not what I expected. What did you expect? A god, maybe? Or a storm? You glance toward the horizon where the last of the sun bleeds out in crimson streaks. Maybe he's both, just quieter than we thought. Historians still debate whether Alexander's genius came from divine inspiration or unrelenting obsession. Watching him now, you think it's neither. It's endurance, the ability to stay in motion while everyone else collapses. The wind picks up, brushing across the plain. It smells faintly of fire and something floral, maybe crushed grass or the remnants of Persian incense. You inhale deeply. It's almost pleasant if you don't think too hard about what's burning. Nearby, a musician unpacks a lyre and plucks at a few strings. The sound is fragile, almost shy, but it carries. The notes hang in the warm air like drifting embers. Slowly, the camp begins to soften. Voices lower, movement still. Even the horses seem to settle, their tails flicking lazily. Philon leans back, resting his head against his shield. "We'll remember this night," he says softly. You nod, even if no one else does. "Someone will write about it," he says. "Maybe 1,000 years from now, they'll make it sound noble." You smile. They'll leave out the part about the bread. Obviously. You both chuckle, then lapse into silence. The sky deepens into violet, stars flickering awake one by one. The same stars you saw last night, except now they seem closer, as if the world shrank during the day's chaos. You lie back, staring up. "You think Darius made it out?" you ask quietly. Philon shrugs. "If he's smart, yes. If he's proud, no." You think about that. Pride and survival rarely travel together. The lyre continues to play, slow and gentle. Someone hums along, the melody blends with the whisper of the wind until it feels like the world itself is exhaling. You close your eyes. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, there's no adrenaline, no shouting, no horns, just the sound of men breathing, the earth cooling and the sky turning over like a tired giant. You start to drift. In that half-sleep, your thoughts wander, not to victory, not to conquest, but to small things, the letter tucked in your tunic, the taste of river water, the way sunlight looked on Bucephalus's mane. These are the moments no historian will ever record. You hear Philon mumble something beside you. "If we're lucky," he says, voice thick with drowsiness, "we'll dream about home tonight." "Yeah," you whisper back. "Just make sure you don't snore." "Can't promise that," he mutters, already pale, half asleep. You smile in the dark. The stars blur slightly, your vision heavy with fatigue. You listen to the slow rhythm of breathing all around you. Hundreds of men sleeping under the same indifferent sky, their dreams overlapping like waves. The battle is over. The noise is gone. Only the heartbeat of the earth remains, slow and steady, like a drum fading into silence. You let it carry you. Dawn comes quietly, no trumpets, no horns, just the soft shuffle of boots and the low murmur of men rediscovering their own voices. You wake to the pale blue of early morning, the kind of light that feels clean, almost merciful. For a moment you forget where you are, then the ache in your shoulders reminds you. Philon is already awake, sitting cross-legged, chewing on something that might once have been bread. He sees your eyes open and nods. "Congratulations," he says. "You're still mortal." You groan as you sit up, joints cracking in protest. "Barely." "Yeah," he says, looking toward the horizon, "but barely counts." The plain of Gaugamela stretches out before you, golden and quiet. The wind has swept most of the dust away, revealing what the night had hidden. Broken chariots, scattered weapons, footprints leading nowhere. It's not the chaos you remember, it's the aftermath, the eerie stillness after thunder. You stand slowly, brushing dirt from your cloak. The air smells of iron, smoke, and something faintly sweet. Persian spices spilled from overturned wagons. The sun is just rising, a dull red disk that looks tired too. Around you, the camp is stirring. Soldiers pack gear, men sandals, trade stories. A few sit by small fires, boiling water for what passes as breakfast. The tone is subdued, not grief, not celebration, just survival. Alexander's banner flaps lazily in the breeze atop the ridge. You can just make out his figure. Small, upright, still. Even at this distance, he seems to radiate purpose. You can tell he hasn't slept. Men like him don't rest, they reset. Philon squints toward the ridge. You think he's already planning the next one? Of course, you say. He probably started before we finished this one. Exhausting, Philon mutters. If I ever conquer the world, I'm taking at least a week off. That's why you won't, you say, smiling. He grins. Good. Sounds like too much paperwork. The humour is soft now, quieter, like laughter in a temple. You both stand for a while, watching the light creep across the plain. A group of officers passes, speaking in low tones. One carries a list on a wax tablet, marking names as he goes. The sound of stylus against wax is faint but relentless. You know what it means, the count. Who's alive, who's not. You turn away. You'd rather not hear the arithmetic of loss. Instead, you walk toward the far side of the camp where the horses are tethered. Bucephalus stands apart from the others, head low, eyes half closed. His flank gleams in the sunlight, dark and glossy despite the streaks of dust. You approach slowly, careful not to startle him. He lifts his head as you near, nostrils flaring. You stop a few steps away, bow slightly out of habit. "Good morning, legend," you say quietly. The horse snorts, unimpressed. You can't help but smile. You carried him through hell again, didn't you? You reach out slowly, palm open, and to your surprise he doesn't pull back. His breath is hot against your skin. You rest your hand against his neck, feeling the pulse beneath the hide, steady, strong, alive. Phelon calls from behind you. "Careful, he doesn't like strangers." "Neither do I," you say. "Guess that makes us friends." He laughs. "If he bites you, I'm not helping." You ignore him, still watching the horse. The sunlight hits his eyes just right, and for a second you think you see reflection. The faint image of Alexander's tent in the dark iris, tiny and perfect. The bond between them feels almost sacred. Historians still debate whether Bucephalus was truly fearless or just loved his rider that much. Looking at him now, you know the truth doesn't matter. What matters is that they understood each other in ways no one else could. You step back, giving him space. "Rest easy," you murmur. "You've earned it." Phelon joins you, wiping his hands on his tunic. "You talk to horses now." "Someone has to. Everyone else talks to gods." He grins. "At least horses answer." You both turn as the horn sounds once, short, sharp, commanding. Not an alarm, a summons. The king calls. The camp stirs immediately. Officers bark orders, soldiers rise, the rhythm of movement resumes. You and Phelon exchange a glance, then follow the tide toward the ridge. When you reach the top, you find Alexander standing before a small group. His generals, priests, a few chosen companions. The wind tugs at his cloak and the morning light halos his profile. He doesn't look victorious, he looks resolved. He speaks briefly, no grand speech, no flourish, just words. You catch fragments. "Babylon. Forward. The gods have given us the path," Phelon mutters under his breath. Did he just say forward again? "Always," you say. Alexander mounts Bucephalus once more, and the army cheers, not wildly but steadily, like a drumbeat. It's not about noise now, it's about momentum. As he rides past, his eyes scan the ranks. When he glances your way, you swear he pauses, a heartbeat, maybe less. He nods once, then he's gone, moving toward the horizon that's already calling his name. Phelon exhales. There he goes again. You nod. He doesn't know how to stop. Do we? You smile faintly. We'll learn. Eventually. The column begins to move, slow at first, then faster. The sound of thousands of feet returns, the endless rhythm of empire in motion. You fall into step beside Phelon, dust rising around you like fog. Behind you, the plain of Gaugamela fades into distance. Ahead lies Babylon, the next conquest, the next chapter in a story that's starting to feel eternal. You glance back one last time. The sunlight glints off something half buried in the dirt, a fragment of a Persian banner, torn but still bright. You wonder if anyone will ever come back for it. Come on, Phelon says, nudging you. You can stare at glory later. You grin. I wasn't staring at glory, just wondering how many footprints history forgets. He laughs. All of them, probably. Then we'd better make good ones. You walk on. The sound of hooves, of armour, of voices carries through the air, a moving city of ambition and fatigue. The world hums beneath you, warm and alive. And though you know there will be other battles, other dawns, other rivers to cross, for now, you let the rhythm of the march lull you. The dust rises in golden spirals, catching the light. You breathe in, and for the first time since the night before the battle, the air doesn't taste like fear. It tastes like tomorrow. The road toward Babylon stretches endlessly. A ribbon of dust unspooling through the heat. You walk it one slow mile at a time, your body caught somewhere between exhaustion and habit. The sun beats down like a hammer, pressing everything flat. The air trembles with it, turning distance into mirage. The army moves as one long shimmering line, horses, carts, banners, and the steady drumbeat of sandals on packed earth. The sound becomes hypnotic after a while. Thud, drag, breath, repeat. You stop noticing where your feet land. The body keeps walking, even when the mind drifts somewhere else. Phelon walks beside you, his usual grin dulled by fatigue. He squints at the horizon, then mutters, "You think there's ever a time when he just sits still?" "Alexander," you say, wiping sweat from your forehead. "No chance." "Figured." He takes a long swig from his water skin. The man's allergic to standing still. You chuckle softly. Maybe that's why the world keeps moving with him. He laughs, a dry sound that barely clears his throat. Then maybe we're all just part of his allergy. That earns him a few chuckles from the men walking nearby. Humour is lighter here, fragile but alive. It keeps everyone from noticing how heavy their gear feels, how long the road really is. After a while, the column pauses for rest. You drop onto a rock by the roadside, grateful for the moment's stillness. The land stretches wide and pale around you. Flat plains broken by scrub and low hills. Far off, vultures circle lazily above what must be the battlefield you left behind. It's strange. You would think victory would feel like something more than this, something louder, grander. But all you feel is tired. The kind of tired that seeps into bone and thought alike. Phelon sits beside you, stretching his legs. "You ever think we'll stop marching?" "Only when he does," you reply, nodding toward Alexander riding up ahead. Phelon shields his eyes. He's still upright, man's made of marble. You squint at the figure on horseback, distant but unmistakable. Alexander's posture never changes. Back straight, head high, gaze fixed on the horizon as if it's something tangible he can grab. The wind tugs at his cloak, the colour too vivid against the dull earth. He looks both real and impossible, like someone the world hasn't finished inventing yet. You remember last night, his quiet words, the nods, the simple, good work. That image lingers more than the battle itself. You wonder if he ever thinks about the individuals behind the formation, or if he's too busy shaping history to notice the faces that carry it. Historians will one day call him a visionary, a tactician, a god. They won't mention the dust between his teeth or the way his hands must ache from gripping the reins. You decide that's fine. Gods aren't supposed to get blisters. The officers start calling for movement again. You groan as you stand, muscles stiff. "Marching, the underrated skill of empire," you mutter. Phelon snorts. "If walking in circles were glory, we'd all be kings." The line moves forward once more. Hours pass. The sun slides lower, trading gold for copper. Shadows grow longer. You start counting steps just to give your mind something to hold on to. 50, 100, 1,000. Somewhere in the middle you lose track. When the heat finally begins to ease, the air fills with the hum of evening insects. The camp is set near a cluster of stunted trees, their sparse leaves whispering in the wind. Fires flicker to life one by one, like constellations taking shape on the ground. You sit by one of them, stretching your legs, letting the warmth seep back into your hands. Someone's cooking something that actually smells edible. Lentils, maybe, or barley. You inhale deeply, and for the first time all day your stomach remembers it exists. Phelon hands you a small cup of watered wine. "For the brave," he says dramatically. You raise your cup. "And for the exhausted." You clink them together and drink. It tastes terrible, but it's cold and that's enough. A few of the younger soldiers nearby start humming. A low, lazy tune, familiar in rhythm but wordless. Someone adds a drum beat with the heel of his hand on a helmet. Soon the sound ripples through the camp, a small reminder that music survives everything. Phelon leans back, staring into the fire. "You know," he says softly, "I used to think the stories about him were exaggerated, that no one could really be that confident. And now, you ask? Now I think he doesn't know how not to be." You nod. Confidence is easy when you keep winning. He glances sideways. "And if he ever loses?" You stare into the fire for a long moment before answering. Then he'll find a way to make losing look like part of the plan. Phelon chuckles, but there's a quiet under it. Something thoughtful. You ever wonder what happens to people like us in stories like his? "Yeah," you say, and we turn into background noise. He grins. "Could be worse. Background noise lives longer than heroes." You smile faintly. You planning to outlive history? Maybe just annoy it a little? The laughter that follows is soft, easy, the kind that comes from men too tired to pretend they're invincible. Night deepens. The stars unfold again, bright and familiar. You lie back on your cloak, staring up at them. Somewhere far off, Alexander's tent glows faintly in the dark. You imagine him awake still, poring over maps, chasing horizons no one else can see. You turn to Phelon. Do you think he ever gets lonely? He shrugs. You can't be that far ahead without leaving everyone behind. You watch the distant tent for a long time, the flame inside flickering like a heartbeat. You think about all the things men like Alexander must trade for greatness. Peace, rest, the luxury of being forgotten. You wonder if it's worth it. The wind sighs through the camp, carrying the faint scent of ash and something green. The fire crackles beside you, its glow soft and rhythmic. The soldier's song fades to a hum, then to silence. You close your eyes. The last thing you hear before sleep takes you is the faint sound of Bucephalus snorting somewhere in the dark and the whisper of the trees that have seen too many armies pass. The stars wheel overhead, ancient and patient, indifferent unto glory. The world wakes slowly, pale light seeps over the horizon, brushing the edges of the camp with silver. The fires from last night have burned down to embers. The smoke rises thin and ghost-like, carrying the faint scent of ash and oil. Somewhere in the distance a horse snorts. A bird calls once, twice, as if testing whether it's safe to sing again. You stir under your cloak, the ground cool against your cheek. For a few seconds you forget where you are, until you hear the creak of armour, the faint murmur of voices, and the unmistakable sound of Alexander's cavalry preparing to move. Philon sits nearby, already awake, rubbing his eyes. "Morning, philosopher," he mutters, "still alive." "Unfortunately," you say, stretching until your spine cracks. "Thought the road might have eaten me in my sleep." He grins faintly. "Too picky." The two of you pack in silence, the kind that feels heavy but calm. Around you men begin to stir, slow movements, muffled groans, the shuffle of sandals against dust. The sky above fades from grey to pink to gold. You watch it for a while, the quiet colours soaking into the air. It's the same sun that rose before Gaugamela, yet it feels different now, softer, as if even the heavens are tired. By the time the sun clears the horizon, Alexander is already mounted, Bucephalus gleaming in the light. His silhouette cuts sharp against the sky. He speaks briefly with Hephaestion, gestures toward the east, then wheels his horse around to face the army. The movement is small but electric, even the weary straighten. You can't hear his words, but you know the rhythm by heart. He's not talking about Persia or glory, he's talking about forward, always forward. Philon shakes his head. He's unstoppable. You watch Alexander lift his spear to catch the morning light. "No," you say softly, "he's just afraid to stop." Philon glances at you but doesn't argue. He doesn't need to. The army begins to move again, slow at first, then steady, the familiar rhythm returning. You fall into step beside him, boots sinking slightly in the soft earth. The sound of the march fills the air, a slow, endless percussion. As the column winds through the open plains, the memory of the battle lingers at your back like a fading echo. The land behind you is quiet now, the scars of war already softening under wind and sun. Grass will grow there again. The world forgets faster than men do. You glance over at Philon. "You ever think about what comes after?" He wipes sweat from his forehead. "After what?" "After this, after him." He laughs, but it's tired. He doesn't believe in after. He believes in next. You nod. The word feels heavy in your... The march continues until the sun climbs high. When Alexander finally halts the column near a small rise, you sink to the ground gratefully. The grass here is soft, the air faintly sweet. It feels out of place, too gentle for soldiers, too peaceful for empire. You lie back, watching the clouds drift lazily across the blue. They look like sails, and for a moment you imagine the army adrift on a quiet sea. The sound of armour, of tired breathing, fades into background noise. Philon flops down beside you. "If the gods are real," he says, "they have a strange sense of humour." "How so? They gave one man every horizon and the rest of us blisters." You laugh softly. "Fair trade, I guess." "Not if you ask my feet." Silence settles between you again, not awkward, just honest. The kind of silence that comes when there's nothing left to prove. You turn your head to watch the horizon. The light glints off Alexander's spear as he rides ahead alone, a single figure outlined against the blazing gold. He doesn't look back. He never does. Historians will say that at Gaugamela, Alexander broke the Persian Empire. But sitting here, watching him ride into the heat, you think maybe it's the other way around. That the Empire broke something in him too, something quiet and human that he'll never quite recover. Philon sighs beside you. You think he'll ever stop chasing whatever it is he's chasing. You shake your head. No, some men aren't chasing glory, they're running from silence. The wind stirs, carrying the smell of dust and distant water. Somewhere a banner snaps in the breeze. The sound is sharp, final. Philon leans back, eyes half closed. Then I hope he keeps running. I'm not ready for a silence yet either. You smile faintly. Me neither. The two of you lie there, watching the clouds drift and the world move. The sound of the army fades into a low hum, steady and eternal. The light softens, the air cools, the day exhales. You let your eyes close just for a moment. You hear the faint rhythm of hooves, the creak of leather, the whisper of wind through the grass. It all blends together into something almost musical. Your thoughts blur. You remember the night before Gaugamela, the stars above, the nervous laughter, the counting of fires. You think about the river, the letters from home, the smell of the earth after battle. And slowly everything begins to fade, the sound, the heat, the weight of memory. Your last thought before sleep is a quiet one. That maybe, someday, someone will stand on this same plane and hear nothing but wind, and that silence will be beautiful, not haunted. You breathe out, the world breathes with you. The sun dips lower, painting everything in amber. The horizon glows like the edge of a dream. And in the middle of it all, Alexander keeps riding. The sound of hooves fades into distance. The light softens, and the wind carries the last whispers of history away. The day folds into twilight, the air cooling, the noise thinning, until it's just the low murmur of men settling for the night. You sit beneath a small tree, the leaves whispering above you, the world around you dissolving into dusk. You breathe slowly, evenly. The sky deepens to indigo, stars pricking through the veil, one by one. Somewhere in the dark, someone hums, soft, uncertain, familiar. It might be Philon, it might be memory. You let your eyes half close, your thoughts dissolving into rhythm. The sounds of the camp are almost tender now. The faint clank of armour being set aside, the hush of water poured into bowls, the sigh of fabric as men lie down. It's peaceful, more peaceful than victory ever feels. You think about the long road behind and the endless one ahead, about Alexander still chasing horizons, and about all of you. Footnotes in a story too large to see. But it doesn't bother you. Not tonight. Tonight the air feels kind, the dust smells of home. You lie back, the earth cool against your spine, and let the sky take you. The constellations shimmer faintly, their light old and unhurried. You wonder if someone, centuries from now, will look at these same stars and whisper your name without knowing why. The thought fades, gentle as breath. You close your eyes. The world drifts away, the noise, the fear, the glory, all softening into silence. The plain of Gaugamela exhales one last time, and the night wraps around you like a blanket, warm and endless. Good night.